I'm Terry Gibb. I am a member of the League and have been for a number of years. Kathy Poor back there, raise your hand, Kathy. She is the president of the Macomb League. I'd like to welcome you all today and want to thank Kim Meltzer, your clerk, for coming and listening in on our presentation. Today's presentation actually is going to have two parts. The first part, as she mentioned, we're going to talk about the different petitions that will be out there that you may be asked to sign. We're going to go over what they are so you have an idea. And then the second part of it is we're actually going to talk about what is this piece of paper you're being asked to sign. We're going to talk about what's there, what to look for on there, that type of thing. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. The League of Women Voters was officially founded in Chicago in 1920, just 6 months before the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the right to vote. It was formed by the suffragettes of the National American Women Suffrage Association, and the League began as a mighty political experiment designed to help 20 million women carry out their new responsibility as voters. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy, and the vision is a pluralistic, multiracial democracy where every person has the desire, the right, and the knowledge and the confidence to participate. And our value is we believe in the power of women to create a more perfect democracy. Okay, the League has a proud reputation of being nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, but always working on vital issues of concern to members of the public. We are fortunate here in Michigan to have a Constitution that gives us three powers as citizens that not all states provide. The first power is called the legislative initiative, and that gives voters the right, if certain conditions are met, to initiate legislation or laws. The second power is to invoke a referendum to repeal laws passed by the legislature. And the third power is to amend the Michigan Constitution. Now, nothing in the Constitution can be altered without the approval of the voters. Any action by the legislature to amend the Constitution must be placed on the ballot for you to vote on. For a constitutional amendment, they have to collect the number of signatures equal to 10% of the total votes cast for the governor in the most recent gubernatorial election. So right now, that means you need 446,198 valid signatures. For an initiative to initiate new or amend existing laws, you have to collect enough signatures equal to 8% of the total votes cast for governor in the most recent gubernatorial election, or 356,958 valid signatures. And for a referendum, you have to collect enough signatures equal to 5% of the total votes cast for governor in the most recent election, and that's 223,099. And you notice on each one of those, I said valid, because some people sign who aren't registered to vote, who are not citizens. Those are not valid signatures, and they have to be taken off. So that's why when you hear about it, you hear a lot of people talking about, well, we need 446,000. We want to have at least 500,000 because some may get thrown out. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about, because it's a little bit different from all the rest, is this first ballot proposal is the initiative to hold a state constitutional convention, also known as CONCON. So if you hear the term CONCON, they're talking about a constitutional convention. It automatically appears on the state ballot every 16 years. It's enshrined in the Michigan Constitution's Article 12, Section 3. The actual ballot question that'll be before you is, shall a convention of elected delegates be convened in 2027 to draft a general revision of the state constitution for presentation to the state's voters for their approval or rejection? Because this is a constitutional requirement, no signatures are required, and this will be Proposal 1 on the November 2026 ballot. Okay, now we're going to get into the ones that are out there for petition drives. The Americans for Citizen Voting, number 1. The Americans for Citizen Voting, number 1, has 2 constitutional amendments approved by the Board of State Canvassers. It's unclear if the sponsor is going to actually go after petitions for this one or just the second one. But this version will require documentary proof of citizenship for newly registered voters. Some of the requirements of this one are: it requires the Secretary of State to verify citizenship of all registered voters, document citizenship, remove non-citizens using governmental records, and track separate eligibility requirements for federal and state and local elections. It also will prohibit counting ballots from voters with unverified citizenship unless the voter shows documents to the Secretary within 6 days after the election. It'll also prohibit counting the ballots from voters with unverified citizenship unless the voter shows documentation, again, within 6 days. For new registrations, it'll require proof of citizenship by showing birth certificate, passport, and/or other documents. It will eliminate the current affidavit alternative for voters without voter ID, and it will require photo ID or a driver's license or partial Social Security to vote absentee. And this one will require a state-funded hardship program for obtaining the required documents. And violations of this will be subject to a $1,000 fine and/or up to 5 years in prison. It is a constitutional amendment, so as you see, it needs 446,198 valid signatures by July 6th of this year. Okay, Americans for Citizen Voting number 2. This is the second one that they got approved. And this is the one that everybody thinks is going to be circulated. This proposed constitutional amendment will require documentary proof of citizenship for new voters as well as those voters updating their registration. It will require citizenship verification for all voters, either by birth certificate, passport, or other documents. It'll remove non-citizens after notice and a 45-day rebuttal period. And then beginning on November 2nd of 2027, it'll prohibit counting ballots for voters with unverified citizenship unless documents shown to the election administrator within 6 days post-election. Again, it will eliminate the current affidavit alternative for voters who get to the polls without an ID, and it will require photo ID or partial Social Security number to vote absentee. And again, there is subject fines or imprisonment for this. Again, it's a constitutional amendment, so it needs the 10% by July 6th of this year. Okay? This Protect Voters' Rights is another proposal requiring documentary proof of citizenship for newly registered and currently registered voters. This one will require Secretary of State to verify citizenship of all registered voters, document citizenship, remove non-citizens using governmental records, and track separate eligibility requirements for federal and state or local elections. Again, prohibit counting ballots from voters with unverified citizenship unless the voter shows documents proving citizenship within 6 days of the election. For new registrations, it will require proof of citizenship by showing birth certificate, passport, and/or other documents. It eliminates the affidavit alternative, and again requires photo ID, driver's license, or partial Social Security number to vote absentee. This one would require a state-funded hardship program for obtaining the required documents, and again, there is violations, fine, and/or imprisonment. It's a constitutional amendment, so it needs the 10% by July 6th. All three of these proposals that I just talked about will require documentation, photo ID, driver's license, birth certificate, U.S. passport, or other documents. Many of these documents are costly and could be difficult to obtain for some voters. In addition, if they're not aware of it, getting them in time to vote may be an issue, because you don't just walk in and get a driver's license or a state ID and they don't hand it to you. It takes a few weeks to get that. So that timing could be an issue with this as well. Okay, the next one is Axe My Tax. This is our constitutional amendment to eliminate all commercial and residential property taxes in Michigan. So what it's going to do, it's going to prohibit real and personal property taxes. Currently, the primary funding source for counties, municipalities, schools, community colleges, parks, and voter-approved bond repayment. It's going to increase a portion of the state sales tax redirected to cities, townships, and villages from 10% to 13%, and for counties from 0% to 6.67%. It's going to also shift 10% of state income, marijuana, alcohol, and tobacco tax revenue to local governments, allowing use of this revenue only for the listed essential government and infrastructure services, but not for schools, community colleges, parks, or local government services. It would require 60% voter approval for local tax increases and require 2/3 vote of the legislature for tax increases greater than 0.1% over 5 years. It does not indicate how the state would recoup all of this lost income into theirs. Again, constitutional amendment, so it needs the 446,000 plus valid signatures by July 6th. Okay, voters to stop pay cuts. This one is a referendum. We've been talking mostly about constitutional amendments. This one's a referendum to repeal Public Act 1 of 2025. And what this is designed to do is to decrease the minimum wage from $13.73 to $13.29, which it is right now, and from $15 to $14.16 in 2027, with annual inflation-based increases every year after that. It would increase tipped worker wages to 48% of the full minimum wage in 2025, 60% in 2026, and 10% each year after that until 2030 when it reaches 100%. It also would eliminate civil fines for employers failing to pay the minimum hourly wage. So if enough valid signatures are collected, the repeal of PA 1 of 25 would appear on the November ballot. And again, since this is a referendum, it only needs 5% of the gubernatorial signatures or votes, and it needs to be done within 90 days of the November election. So we're talking like the first week of August. Invest in My Kids is a constitutional amendment to increase money into the state school aid fund. And what's going to happen with this one, beginning in 2027, it would impose an additional 5% tax on annual taxable income over $1 million for joint filers and $500,000 for single filers. This tax is in addition to the existing state income taxes, and that this money, that 5% additional, would be deposited directly into the state school aid fund. It requires that money to be used exclusively on local school district classrooms, career and technical education, reducing class sizes, and retaining teachers. It also would prohibit the use of money for other purposes other than what's specifically identified, with spending subject to annual audits. Again, it's a constitutional amendment, so it needs the 446,000 signatures plus by July 6. Okay, Michiganders for Money Out of Politics. This one is a little bit tricky, so I'll walk through it. What this would do, it would prohibit regulated electric and gas utilities, contractors with over $250,000 annually in government contracts, and people and organizations with substantial connections to these utilities and contractors from making either direct or indirect campaign contributions to those who run for or hold offices that impact them. So if they're going to vote on whether something to do with the utility or the contractors, then they would no longer be able to contribute to their campaign funds if this passes. It would expand campaign finance laws and restrictions that regulate spending on political communications to apply to communications clearly identifying candidates or ballot questions, even if they do not expressly advocate for or against them. And this would include laws that require disclosing donor information. And last, it would expressly apply the law requiring disclosure of who paid for political communications to internet political communications. Because this one is an initiative, it needs 8% of the ballots cast in, votes cast in the gubernatorial, or 356,958. And this one has to be done by the end of May, May 27th. Okay, now let's actually talk about the petition that you could be asked to sign. And you probably will be. Now that the weather's getting nice, it's going to be, everybody's going to be out. They're going to be at every mall, every grocery store, every place, you know, every festival, everything. There'll be people asking you to sign. So let's have a look at this. There are certain required items on the petition sheet. The first, in 8-point type, and you know that's pretty tiny, 8-point type, the name and address of the person, group, or organization paying for the printing of the petition form. Has to be on there, preceded by the words, paid for with regulated funds by, and then MCL 169.27. So for example, paid for with regulated funds by ABC Business, MCL 169.27. That has to be on there, all right? So look for that. That will tell you. And you can see it's going to be way down. If you, I don't have anything little, but it's way down here. See in the teeny tiny type? It's there. So take your magnifying glass with you wherever you go. There also is a 100-word summary of the ballot proposal. And that's going to be right up in this area, okay? Now, if you read that 100-word summary and it doesn't tell you what you want to know, or if it's unclear, the full ballot wording is on the back of the petition. That's why I said they only sign one side, because the back has the full word for word of what they're asking. So you can ask to see that and look at that. Okay, and then the next thing we suggest you look for, it's way up here at the top, very top line. And what this says is the circulator of this petition is a, in parentheses, mark 1, a paid signature gatherer or a volunteer signature gatherer. And the reason you might want to know that is because if you're depending on this person to give you the information about this petition, what's on this petition, whether they're paid or a volunteer could give you information about how much they really know about this petition. So those are the three things we recommend that you look at closely before you sign. And then if after looking at these things, you still are unsure exactly what you're being asked to sign, remember, you can decline to sign until you've had the opportunity to gather more information. Just because somebody puts a petition under your nose doesn't mean if you're not sure. And the last thing I will say about this is if you do sign it, and we're not advocating you do or you don't, but if you do sign, try to remember what you signed so that when you go to the next spot, you can say, I already signed that. So you don't sign twice, because when they're verifying signatures, those signatures will, second signatures, third signatures will get thrown out. So if you try to remember what you signed. Before you put your signature on a petition, take the time to fully read, understand, and verify what it is asking for, what the potential consequences are, and who is sponsoring it, so that you're making an informed choice. It's essentially, this is a reminder to be informed and be cautious so voters don't accidentally support something they may disagree with or that has hidden implications. These are some trusted resources. In addition to Citizens Research Council, Michigan Board of State Canvassers is one. Vote 411 for candidate and voter information. MichiganVoting.org for election voting and registration requirements. The Michigan League of Women Voters has a variety of information on related to voting resources. And Michigan Department of State, which has election and petition information. Okay, one last thing. Membership in the League of Women Voters is open to anybody over 16 and over. And if you join, you automatically, you get to be state, national, and local. So you get all three. 3 for 1, that's a good deal, eh? And membership provides the opportunity to be involved in local, state, and national issues. And this can be anything from simply being a member, paying your dues, and that's all you can do, to being actively engaged in candidate forums that we do in a number of communities, to being an observer after the election at the Board of Canvassers when they're certifying the elections. There are a whole host of things that you can do. And actually, you can participate in a lot of our activities without actually being a member. So, but we always like to have members. I want to thank everybody for coming. You're more than welcome to stay and talk. Oh, thank you.